All right, here we go. Here's another interesting webinar. This is Lance Luke and Martin Pea. We're part of the Ask the Building Expert webinar series. And before I get into the topic, I wanted to let you know about National Day. So it's National Frosted Cookie Day. And I know when I was a kid, I don't know about you, Martin, I used to like those frosted animal crackers. That was like one of my favorite, but um, my mom used to buy me the regular ones that didn't have any frosting on it. So when she did buy the frosted ones, oh, I was super happy. In fact, I might go pick up some today since it's the frosted cookie day. It's also forklift safety day. I have my OSHA forklift certification. I don't use it because let other people drive the forklift. And then it's actually National Egg Roll Day. So have yourself an egg roll. You know, people get confused about the difference between summer roll, spring roll, egg roll, but that's for a different topic. I'm going to be honest with you with this topic. Um, Today's topic is actually a crappy topic. And we're talking about cesspools, and specifically cesspools in Hawaii. Although there's cesspools all over different parts of the world, and reason being is um, when you live in a rural area or people are living in areas where there's no utilities, no city and county connection, could be water, it could be sewer lines, it could be electricity cable. Um, there's nowhere, for the wastewater to go, and therefore, uh, hence the topic of cesspools. And what is a cesspool anyway? It's basically a hole in the ground. When you flush the toilet, the wastewater just goes into the hole in the ground. It doesn't connect to your city or county sewer system and gets, uh, drained to a sewage treatment plant and all that technical stuff. So that's why we're going to be talking about cesspools in Hawaii. And mainly Hawaii, I'll be talking about. If you're tuning in and you're from a different state in the United States, um, the information that I'm going to provide will still be applicable, as well as if you're tuning in from anywhere in the world. Um, the basic information is still applicable, except when I talk about specific Hawaii information, which this webinar is geared for. It's going to, and I'm going to be giving you Hawaii details and so forth. So let's continue. This webinar is presented by Construction Management Inspection. This is probably the only 5-second commercial, and this is a construction management building inspection firm in Hawaii. Going through these slides here. I'm known as a national building expert. You could look me up online if you want. And let's go right into it. We're going to be talking about cesspools through this whole webinar. And you may or may not be interested, but if you have a cesspool, I'm sure you'll be more interested. If you don't, then you may at least want to have the information. And this applies to homeowners or contractors or even real estate professionals, mortgage professionals, because it may come up in your line of work. So what is the purpose of this webinar? Well, we're doing this webinar. We're giving this webinar to help people understand why cesspools in Hawaii is crucial for property owners, developers, environmental stakeholders, and all that, because it's a problem. It's an environmental problem, and I'll explain more. Questions that you may have is, why are cesspools still around in Hawaii? Um, what can property owners do? Let's say if you do have a cesspool, to avoid penalties. And you might say, well, what penalty um, are you talking about? All right, I'll explain further. And then if you do have a cesspool, what's the alternatives to having a cesspool? Because the bottom line is the government stepped in and basically regulated this cesspool industry and says that you cannot have cesspools at from a certain date. So the drop dead deadline date is 2050, 2050, which is 25 years from now, if my math is correct. Okay, so 25 years may seem a long time, although it may not to some people. Let's talk about the history of cesspools in Hawaii, origins and purposes. Cesspools were first introduced as a simple and cost-effective waste management solution for rural and undeveloped areas in Hawaii. So areas that did not have huge subdivisions with the city and county sewer lines, right? It's not like you flush your toilet and then the wastewater goes from your house into the city sewer line. Okay? And then from there, who cares? You don't worry about, right? So in areas that didn't have subdivisions where you had underground utilities like wastewater lines, that's where the cesspools came about. So these cesspool systems were particularly common in areas with limited access to the centralized sewer systems that the city and county would provide. And it serves both residential and commercial properties across the different islands of Hawaii. Now, not only the cesspools were prevalent for residential, the house, but also for commercial. In the old days where you had stores and like grocery stores and retail shops and all that, and the areas where these shops are located didn't have any sewer connection, then they use cesspools. Okay, so this was in the early times. But let me back up. In in the days of like Rome and Greece, in those old days, what did they use? They used basically cesspools also. Okay, so it's been around, the concept's been around a long time. Now, um, you may have heard of these um, houses, old houses in the United States, and they have these outhouses where there was no indoor plumbing or anything. So the toilet is located outside of the main house, and it was a little shed. So you'd have to walk outside to the outhouse and use the outhouse. Okay. And basically there was a hole in the ground that was a cesspool, and then they built the outhouse over that. Okay, so that's what the situation is. All right, so there's environmental and public health concerns. What's the concern? Well, when you have a hole in the ground and wastewater is going in the hole, you know, where else does it go? Okay, so basically the wastewater is untreated. Okay, so you flush your toilet or you do dishes and it goes along your drain pipe and it goes into the cesspool. So untreated wastewater is going into the cesspool, water is sitting there, and it seeps into the ground. So what happens is eventually it reaches a water table, right? Um, Either in the ground, deep in the ground, or it could be surrounding area and contaminates. There's a lot of contamination. Contaminants from cesspools can pollute drinking water sources, coastal waters, and ecosystems. Okay, let's say you have a house right at the beach and you have a cesspool. Well, what happens? Okay, the water in the cesspool, the wastewater leaches out into the sand, and next thing you know, it's like in contact with the ocean. Or if you're located, your house is located near a stream or any kind of water table or something like that, that's very problematic. So in Hawaii, we have a unique and fragile environment. Um, we have a lot of coastal reefs, marine life, and it's been polluted by cesspools. It's also polluted by when we have a lot of rain or storm and our city sewer system gets overloaded. But we're talking about cesspools right now. So the contamination contributes to algae blooms because it's the wastewater is considered like fertilizer. It has nutrients, and so algae grows. And if you have all these algae blooms and it just becomes so too horrendous, like seaweed growing, it can actually suffocate marine life and totally cover up the coral, and the coral starts dying, and that's what's happening. So the contamination contributes to algae blooms and the degradation of marine habitats. So we're talking pretty big environmental issue here. Now, the EPA, which is the Environmental Protection Agency, and that's the strong arm of regulating environmental considerations and concerns. So the EPA stepped in, and they're regulating LCCs, which stands for large capacity cesspools. And large capacity cesspool is not a cesspool uh, at your own house. So you live in a house and it has a cesspool and it's a single family house or duplex. That cesspool is not considered LCC. It's not considered a large capacity cesspool. It's considered a small capacity. Okay, so the definition uh, we're talking about is from the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, and is tasked with protecting human health and the environment by regulating pollutants and overseeing compliance with federal laws. So the EPA, the government, came up with the nomenclature, the terms that we're using to talk about cesspools. So um, the efforts of EPA in Hawaii include enforcing regulations, conducting inspections, issuing penalties for noncompliance to ensure environmental safety. And you may ask, well, what's the problem here? Well, basically to this date, the EPA has actually fined property owners with large capacity cesspools. And I think the total fines are about $250,000 to date. And these are large capacity cesspools on I believe the Big Island and the island of Kauai. So you can do more research if you want. So here's the definition of a large capacity cesspool, according to EPA and the Department of Health, State of Hawaii. A large capacity cesspool is a cesspool that serves multiple households or a non-residential facility generating more than 20 people's worth of wastewater daily. I don't know how they came up with that, but basically what it means is if you live in a single family house, right, and you don't have 20 people living at the house, that's not considered a large capacity cesspool. So mainly um, apartment complexes, apartment buildings, and also commercial property, whatever the use is. They don't go by use for a large capacity cesspool. So you don't go by, oh, if it's an office building or a retail or a grocery store, that it doesn't matter. They just go by what it serves. Large capacity cesspools were banned under EPA's underground injection control UIC regulations in 2005 due to their significant contribution to groundwater contamination. Now, 2005, so we're not talking about some new law that just came about in recent years. This has been going on the books since 2005, and the discussion about cesspools were discussed like prior to 2000s in 1980s, 1990s. Okay, so there's a pretty long look back on the discussions, and to finally have EPA come forth and basically do something about it, pass some laws. So um, here's a brief historical overview of EPA enforcement in Hawaii. The EPA's active enforcement in Hawaii started in 2005. So EPA works closely with the State Department of Health and other related industries. Um, so when we say that the EPA work closely with local governments, that's basically the state of Hawaii Health Department, as well as the politicians that all got together to in support of the EPA guidelines. So basically in 2005, the EPA worked with the local Hawaii governmental officials to identify non-compliant cesspools. And how does the state know that your cesspool is non-compliant? Well, they have their data, right? And there's also the data from the Board of Water Supply when people pay their sewer fee. Okay, so they know how many households are tapped into the various, city system in whatever island you're on. And then what about all these other houses that aren't tapped into the system? Well, they must be on a cesspool or some kind of private wastewater system, right? So that's how they get their information. The key milestones: issuing fines and consent agreements to large property owners who fail to upgrade or close their cesspools. So they're cracking down. The EPA is going to these large capacity cesspool property owners and saying, what are you doing about it? You have to show that you're taking steps to, get the problem resolved. Okay, if it's not resolved, then there's action that the government's taking. So notable enforcement actions: there's substantial penalties levied on businesses and organizations that did not meet compliance deadlines. Now, for owners to just turn their back and tell the government, you don't tell us what to do, we're not doing anything. Okay, that's not something the government is going to take lightly. But if you're not in compliance, but you're taking steps to be compliant, for instance, you as a property owner hired an engineer to design some kind of private sewage treatment plant system or septic system or something like that. That's showing that you're trying to take action in a positive way, right? So that's good communication. So the government likes that and wants to work with you. For the ones that just ignore the government, that's when they want to crack down, and they're not too happy about it because you're not following the guidelines. And this is not a city guideline like you get a ticket for speeding. When you're talking about a federal law, there's a lot of power behind that law, and it's not only a federal law, it's both the state and federal. So talk about fines and compliance penalties, common violations and associated penalties if you don't want to comply. So failure to close or replace large capacity cesspools after the 2005 ban, continued operation of non-compliant cesspools despite notice from EPA or notices from EPA or state authorities, okay, fines can be over 100,000 for not upgrading by the required deadline. Businesses and facilities with large capacity cesspools were already fined thousands of dollars per day until the cesspools of property were property closed or replaced. So if you're a cesspool owner, don't take the attitude where I don't care, I don't need to do this, or I don't have money to do it. Okay, that there's no um, provision in the law saying if you don't have any money, you don't have to follow the law. So, but reach out and see how the government can help you. Let's talk about how non-compliance affects property owners. Of course, there's financial implications, legal implications, property value impact. If you have a cesspool on your property, is it worth more or is it worth less? Okay. If you have two similar properties, right? Same type, same location, but one house is connected to the city sewer line and the other house has a cesspool, which property value is more? Of course, it's the one that's connected to the city sewer system, not the cesspool. Because in order to replace the cesspool, it's going to cost money. Okay. How non-compliance affects property owners. For many property owners, the long-term costs of non-compliance far outweigh the initial investment in upgrading or replacing their cesspool. So there was a state mandate, and it's called Act 125. Act 125 requires all cesspools to be converted or closed by 2050. Remember the year 2050 where I talked about the EPA, right? So basically the state mandate is in concert with the EPA. So Act 125 basically is copying what the EPA deadline is, which is 2050. So the legislation focuses on switching to more sustainable water systems. So it's like, get rid of your cesspool, you got to install some other wastewater system, whether you connect with the city sewer, if the city sewer line is available. If not, then you have to have your own private system on your own property. So here's where the Department of Health gets more involved. So the Hawaii State Department of Health oversees compliance with Act 125. They provide guidelines, resources, and support to help property owners meet the mandate. So the state Department of Health doesn't want to fine anybody, right? They don't want to be the police enforcing environmental things. They're here to help you. And some of the information that I'm going to give to you, I got from the State Department of Health, like the cesspool count and things like that. So it's not like they're against property owners and trying to stick them with huge fines and all that. They're here to help and they want to help. They're helpful. I call and talk to them and they're, very helpful. I'd rather talk to the Department of Health than the Department of Taxation, right? So state mandates and Act 125 implications for property owners. Residential and commercial property owners must plan and budget for cesspool replacement. You got to plan. You don't need to plan if you have millions of dollars sitting in the bank and you have access to that, then that's your own reserve fund. A lot of residential single family property owners and old time commercial property owners, they don't have like thousands, millions of dollars sitting in the bank to just all of a sudden magically replace their cesspool. Okay, so there's budgeting, there's planning that needs to be done. But remember, failure to comply could result in huge fines, legal issues, or challenges, even when selling or renovating their property. Okay, if your house is connected to a cesspool and you wanna build an addition or renovate or put an ADU, what's the chances are you're gonna get approval? Because what's the capacity of the cesspool? So that that may be an issue. Replacement of cesspools, you may ask, well, what's the cost, challenges, and all that? It's high costs, ongoing maintenance. You might have limited space, logistical challenges. That's some of it, but the idea is you hire a engineer that specializes in replacing cesspools, or there's contractors I know that the contractor's also an engineer and they specialize in design of private sewage treatment plants and those kind of things. So it would be good to contact somebody like that. Um, here's a interesting thing. Uh, when I was on Kauai the other year, there was a property that was located near the beach, and there's a cesspool there, and they're trying to install a sewage treatment plant. But when they're digging the ground, they found EV, which is um, bones from Hawaiian ancestors. So the idea is, well, what does the homeowner do in that case? Does he still keep digging to install his sewage treatment plant, or does he stop? So there was a lot of uh, little conflicts here and there between the property owner and the state health department, politicians, and the people who live on the island protesting. So it's not an easy situation. So my take is, my advice to you is if you do have a cesspool, you start early to avoid fines, deadlines, and you want to protect Hawaii's resources. So the first step would be to have somebody come in and evaluate either a, uh, a wastewater type contractor or engineer that designs these kind of systems to replace cesspool. That's the first step. And you can get an estimate of the uh, costs. Okay, and then that way you have a budget. So the conclusion, and I know I kind of went through this fairly fast within 30 minutes, but I like to give time to take questions and provide more information. So the conclusion that I have as an expert in environmental concerns, building safety, and so forth is if you do have a cesspool, um, start taking action now. Don't wait too long, because the sooner you replace your cesspool, the better. Okay, because you're saving the environment, one, and you're getting ahead of everyone else that needs to replace their cesspool. Okay. The other thing too is if you wait 5 years, 10 years from now, the costs for engineering and construction is gonna be sky high. Okay, so the timing is always, it's better to do it now than wait, kind of thing. So before I take the questions, I want to go briefly over if you attended our webinars before, we've given a whole bunch of webinars on different topics related to buildings and construction, some real estate. Um, and our webinars are recorded and put on our website. And, we want you to take advantage and learn from what we give. And I'll tell you what the website domain name is soon. What's coming up? We have another in 2 weeks, another webinar. I'll be talking about coastal communities around the world. And the idea of coastal communities is because of global warming, sea level rise, and all that, uh, a lot of properties are actually um, not doing too well. Okay, so if you don't believe in global warming, sea level rise, and all that, that's fine. But I think what I have to tell you, um, information in a webinar would be interesting. Okay, it's happening. Uh, Visit our website. It's askbuildingexpert.now.site, and then that's where we have all our webinars you can take advantage of. You don't need a Netflix account or anything like that. It's free. Uh, we have on our website different other websites we call those expert websites, where you pick a topic and you go to the website and you learn more about the topic. For instance, we got painting, waterproofing, asphalt, fire, life safety. We even have one on contractor licensing in Hawaii. We have one on the Lahaina fire. So we've got a lot of different things for you. We have our expert blog, National Building Expert blog. You can go and read and take a look. There's a whole bunch of information. And here's our webinar. Here's just a small list of the topics: rebuilding your home after wildfire, tackling leaks, drainage, and mold in buildings, fixing building foundation problems. I mean, we got a whole bunch of different topics. And then books. So right now we're still offering a free download of different books that you can read if you're interested in senior safety in the home, asphalt reconstruction, Lahaina wildfire, concrete spalling repair, monster houses, cast iron drain piping. I call this my book one, is How Safe is Your Building. That's the book that started it all, and from that book we just kind of got into different items that we're talking about. So how safe is your building? We talk about concrete spalling. That led to a separate webinar and its own website and book, and then cast iron drain piping. So it's an evolution of things, and we've been having fun teaching you and giving you valuable information. We have also premises liability website, and we want people to be safe, not hurt, regardless of whether it's a active construction site or whether it's a condominium building or your own house, right? There's certain things that we want you to be aware of, like slip and fall, trip and fall issues, stairway railings, and that sort of thing. And now we got to the Q&A part, and this is a fun part for me because I try to give people more information than what was covered in the actual content of the webinar and the PowerPoint. So I'm going to turn it over to Martin and see if there's any questions that came up. So let me do that now. Martin, are you around?
There are some questions on the Q&A if you want to take a look at that, because it's got some good questions. Can you see those? The Q&A button.
Oh yeah, okay. Let me look at this thing.
You got them? Okay.
Are you able to read it?
Yes, yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Let's see, these are all your Zoom visitors today. The first one is from Joan, and she's asking, will we get the slides after the Zoom? And your answer is?
How much should we charge for that? So the correct answer is yes. So after each webinar, when we actually receive the video, we're going to post it on our website, and then we're also going to post a takeaway, which is the PowerPoint. So you get to download the whole PowerPoint, all the slides. Marta just sent me a text that we shouldn't charge. So it'll be free. Martin, he likes to give away stuff. So thank you. Yeah, so the answer to the question is yes, you'll be able to get the PowerPoint slides. Uh, we don't charge you or anything like that. And then, the other thing is after you review the slides or after you had time to digest, uh, the contents of the webinar, if you have any questions, um, just let us know. We're also broadcasting. Um, we're actually restreaming. We're streaming on our Zoom platform, but also we're restreaming on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube at the same time. So if you guys are on any social media, you can post your questions there, and we might not be able to answer it right now, but we'll get to it. So we haven't missed answering anybody's questions. And before I forget, thank you everybody who's on our Zoom platform. I mean, it's exciting when there's a whole bunch of people on our Zoom platform also, and we appreciate all the other questions. So um, yeah, that answers that question. So you'll get the
Good.
PowerPoint. Yeah, we're not.
Yes, and then we have
Yeah.
Laura on the Zoom that's asking, so what happens if they find Evie? How do they proceed?
Okay. Well, let's take a scenario. Somebody, some property owner, okay, has property, single family house or duplex, and they're they have to dig up their cesspool or cover it up, but you don't connect to the sewer line. Let's say sewer line's not available. So you got to dig up part of your yard to install a private sewage treatment plant. And when the contractor does that, they find EV, they find bones. You don't just dig it out and get rid of it. Okay, there's a protocol. You have to contact this. There's a special state agency. Um, I think it's connected with the state, Hawaii State Burial Council or something, and there's certain protocol you have to follow. The job, once they detect EV, the job has to stop. Okay, and then special archaeologists would come to the property and investigate and take pictures and look at their maps and whatnot. So there's a whole protocol that got to be followed. So the main thing is the job has to stop until further investigation is completed. And there's a whole separate protocol for that. So I can't tell you exactly what the protocol is right now, but it's there, and you can find out. So
Okay, Lance, thanks for that answer. And then we have another one here on Zoom. Jill is asking, what programs exist to help homeowners pay for these conversions? The state needs to help with tax credits, low interest loans, etc. Most families cannot afford to make these conversions. True.
um, I don't know any at this time, but I do know that in the condominium industry, okay, and as well as the private sector, there's been a huge insurance crisis. Okay, so the reason I'm telling you about this because it's related. So because of the uh, increase in condo insurance for hurricane coverage, the um, the state had to get involved, and right now they're coming up with programs to help these condominium owners. And one of the programs I heard is they're going to tap into the hurricane fund to cover uh, low interest loans. Now, it's not it's not free. It's not a grant. It's not money that the government's just going to write you a check, and it's not free money. So it's going to be a loan that has to be paid back. Okay, so the other option is similar. It's a similar type of loan too. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because the government may need to step in and come up with some kind of program to help homeowners and business owners that are faced with this kind of situation. It's not like people have the money. Um, nobody prior to the mandate, no one knew about this. No one knew that they had to replace their cesspool, right? And so slowly the word's getting around. So nobody had that information, and I don't know anybody that has a cesspool that have been saving money prior to the mandate to replace their cesspool. I don't know anybody. If there's somebody, then let me know. Maybe somebody said, "Oh, I think one of these days you should replace their cesspool, and so let's save money for that." But I'm not aware of anybody at this time. But I agree. There should be some kind of program to help people. Um, People who are on fixed incomes, they're seniors, they don't have extra money to do this kind of thing. So I think the government should help, and it may not be only the state government. It may be the federal government that's helping. Um, but who knows what's going on with what's happening now with the federal government. But did you know across the whole United States, what state has the most cesspools? Anybody know the answer? Martin, take a guess.
Us.
That's right. Hawaii has the most cesspools. So because of that, I think the federal government should step in and say, oh, we're here to help you in, tax credits or whatever kind of credit or grant or something. Um, and I agree with that person who asked the question. Um, there has to be help. I mean, look at this. I don't know if you're aware, but the Board of Water Supply, okay, you get a water bill and you get a sewer bill. Okay, your sewer bill is way more than your water bill by percentage. Okay, if you don't know this, here's something to be aware of. They're going to increase the sewer fees like a lot, and there's a whole tiered program because the Board of Water Supply can't go, oh, starting 2 years from now, we're going to increase your sewer fee 110%. There's going to be a riot. So they're going to be increasing it slowly every year, whatever the program is. And it's going to be a lot because the Hawaii infrastructure for sewer lines, wastewater lines, we're way behind. I mean, if you drive around roads and they're digging up the road because they're replacing a broken sewer line, that could be part of the problem. We're way behind in fixing our sewer line, right? So that money is to help with that. Is the money going to be used to help people who have cesspools? I don't think so, but maybe that's a good idea. Okay, so I'll have more information to give you, but I'd like to see what other questions come up.
Well, we have a follow-up one from Laura about the cesspool item. Let me just read it. It says maybe she missed something, but what is going to happen with the properties that don't have enough room to install a septic tank or system? Some can't even gain access to their cesspool because it's too close to the foundation of their home. Or even partially under their home. Just one of the
Okay,
individual problems to deal with, yes?
okay, so good question. That's going to be taken up on a case-by-case basis. So basically, the homeowner is going to have to go to the Department of Health and plead their case and say, I'm kind of stuck what's the next step, and maybe work out some workable solution. But I'm aware of some properties that the house is built right over the cesspool. Okay, so in that situation, um, the cesspool probably would, well, the cesspool would need to be abandoned, either abandoned, or I would recommend filling it up and just leaving it there, and then connecting a separate private wastewater system somewhere else, or maybe it could be in the same area. I don't know. And then after that, then you connect your sewer lines of your house to that new system. So there's ways to work around it. That's if your house is raised construction. If your house is on a concrete slab, then you have to bypass, uh, and probably do a workaround on the outside exterior of your house. Now, in a situation where there's no room on your property because your lot is not 5,000 square feet, it may be 3,500 square feet and there's no room, or maybe your lot is 5,000 square feet, but you got city and county or state easements running, drainage easements or whatever, running across your property. So in these cases, it's going to be a case by case basis. Going to have to get your contractor or engineer involved and try to come up with a solution. You might have to um, file an appeal or something. But what's going to happen is the when you apply for the building permit, somehow the DPP is going to have to work with the state and try to come up with some kind of workable solution, because when you're going to close down your cesspool and put a private system, you're going to need to get a building permit. You're going to need to get it approved by both the DPP, the city building department, and the state of Hawaii Health Department. So just keep that in mind. We got interesting questions, so good.
Oh, yeah, that's yeah, we've had a good audience on Zoom with the questions there. We have a couple of others from the social, if you get time for them. Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Well, these are kind of general type questions, I guess. Yeah. What are the most significant environmental impacts that cesspools are causing for us in Hawaii?
Um, the environmental impact is groundwater contamination.
Hmm.
So you have a hole in the ground filled with wastewater. Where does that wastewater go? In some situations, in areas that don't have utilities, so they have wells on the property. That's where they get their water. It's drinking water wells. And then if your property is close to a stream, or you're on the beach, you're in the ocean, that the wastewater from the cesspool is going to be leaching into the beach and into the ocean, into coral reefs and all that. So it's a huge environmental concern, and that's why the government decided it's more of an environmental concern that it is a financial concern. So it's like it doesn't matter how much money it's going to take to resolve the problem. It just got to be done. That's the government's standpoint. And that's why I agree that the government needs to help out, right? And just not, leave us stranded. Got any other questions that
Oh,
came
yeah.
up?
Well, I just see a comment here by Laura on the Zoom, and it says DPP has 25 years to get ready. I guess I hope they're working on it. Yeah, so that's something that probably should be brought to their attention. Yeah, the
Oh,
25 years, and they've already had almost what 20 to.
that's pretty funny. I should send an email to DPP saying, "Oh, year 2050, is the deadline, so can you guys get ready now so we don't have to wait years and years to get a permit for our replacement of a cesspool?
Good point. Sometimes that's what it takes, somebody kind of kicking up a fuss there to get things moving, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they want to hear from me though.
Okay, we get another one here. That's kind of related to that, because you talked about groundwaters. How is the groundwater and coastal ecosystem affected, yeah, by all this cesspool stuff? And I think
Oh
we,
yeah, it's just, bad for the environment overall.
and then I guess this is another general one, I guess from somebody who maybe hasn't joined us for the whole session here is, what challenges do property owners face when transitioning from cesspools to wastewater systems?
Oh, the
Kind of
big
what,
challenge, the big challenge is the money, the financial aspect. Secondly, case by case basis, like, one of the attendees brought up the question about what happens if there's no room or the cesspool's underneath the house or something like that, right? So there's challenges that would be on a case by case basis, or they start digging up and then you find EV or some other issue. Oh, by the way, just to let you know, if they start digging up the ground in at your house, at your property, and they find gold, lithium, silver, oil, or whatever, it doesn't belong to you, property owner. It belongs to the state, right? So sorry to let you know, but that's just how it is. So we got any other questions?
I thought I found some, what is it, the rare earth elements on my property. You mean I cannot keep them?
Oh, if you do find it, don't tell anybody.
Oh,
Okay,
okay,
because once the state finds out, they're gonna be down there claiming
got
ownership
it,
of it and
got it.
all that. So
Yeah, okay,
I,
okay.
yeah,
Well, actually, I just had one question, and this is more specific to, I guess, what you mentioned about the outer islands, having a lot of the cesspool problems. So I get a lot of family in Big Island, Kalapana, and I'm sure out that side they don't have, these sewer systems. So they're gonna all be faced with these kind of issues. So
yeah, better let them know because, tell them that, well, ask them a question. Hey, I got this question. When you flush your toilet, where does the stuff go? And then see what they say. And then whatever they say, the thing is filtering in the black sand. And what happens to it, I don't know. So hopefully, it's not so bad and, um, you know, they're not, their property is not close to the ocean because the ones that are close to the oceans and streams and water features are the worst. So I didn't I didn't mention this information earlier, but I want you guys to know now. I was kind of surprised when I got it. I got this information from the State Department of Health. Okay, so my question was, how many cesspools are there in Hawaii anyway? Right? And the answer, 88,000. 88,000 cesspools in Hawaii, broken down by these islands. 50,000 are on the Big Island because the Big Island is so big and there's a lot of rural areas and all that. 14,000 on the island of Kauai, 12,000 island of Maui, 11,000 on Oahu, and I personally know property owners that have some of these cesspools on Oahu. And then Molokai is 1,400. I don't I don't know if there's any on Lanai or not, but also other information I got, there's 43,000 cesspools out of the 88 that um that directly pose big problems to our water resources. So that's like almost half, okay? Um, 6,700 cesspools are within 200 feet of stream channels. So you're talking about out of the total 88,000 cesspools, close to half of them are already posing risk to our water resources, whether it's stream channels or ocean. And that's a lot. I guess in the past we weren't too concerned about it, but personally, um, my family's house was in Kailua and Enchanted Lakes, and we had a cesspool, and every time we would clean yard and have weeds and all the grass cuttings, we would just throw it in the cesspool. Wow, that was after we connected it to the city sewer. Okay, so we have to keep throwing stuff in to fill it up. Um, but prior to the connection, because at that time in Enchanted Lakes, there was no sewer connection, and then they came about later, and everybody that had cesspools connected to the sewer system. So I remember having big parties, and so many parties where the cesspool used to overflow and have to call the pump truck to come and pump it out. But here here's a here's another indication if you have a cesspool that there's a leak or some kind of issue, okay, or overflowing. If you look in the yard area where your cesspool is located, there's like a round uh, cover or a square cover with usually like a little metal hanger that's like a piece of rebar or something. If you notice that area is green, greener than the rest of your yard, okay, that's an indication that you may have something wrong with your cesspool, or it could be overflowing or leaking. If the rest of your yard is kind of yellow or not as green and this area is like super green, then that's a red flag. Okay, so here's something to take away. According to the State Department of Health, there's a total of 53 million gallons of untreated sewage that goes into the ground every single day from cesspools. 53 million gallons. And I didn't have a concept of that. So I thought, what is the average size of a swimming pool? Okay, to get kind of a basic idea here. So the average size of a swimming pool when you fill it up with water is between 15,000 to 20,000, 15,000 to 30,000 gallons. Now that's the average size swimming pool for a house. Okay, now I'm not talking about like a huge mansion where they have Olympic sized pools. This is the average size. So between 15 and 30,000 gallons. So I said, okay, let's take average of 20,000 gallons. Okay. How many swimming pools filled, if they were filled with the wastewater, how many swimming pools are we talking about every day? And I calculated out using my math because I had to take math in engineering school and all that. So the calculation ends up being 2.65 million swimming pools a day, if they were filled with wastewater, are going into the ground. That's huge. That's like crazy. So when I look at that number, I'm going, wow, we're gonna do something about it. So the more I think about it, the more I'm thinking that year mandate 2050 is like too far off. It should be sooner. But then we have the problem with logistics, we have the problem with financing and those kind of things. But yeah, that number is like astounding. It's like kind of crazy. But before we sign off, I just want to double check if there's any other questions or comments.
No, Lance, we're good. I haven't seen any others on the social media side.
Okay. Well, I appreciate everybody tuning in. Those of you who are on our Zoom platform, thank you very much. And those are social media. um, platforms, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. This is an interesting topic, and I'm surprised we got so many attendees, being that, the subject is a crappy topic. But um, yeah, it was fun. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you can join us at the next webinar. And also, we invite you to go to our website, askbuildingexpert.now.site. Take advantage of the information materials we have while you can. All right. So until then, we'll see you later. Thank you very much. Aloha, mahalo. Okay.